watchers. Welcome everyone to ThursdAI for November 6th. And my name is Alex Volkov. I'm an AI evangelist with weights and biases. And we are very happy to start the show with some breaking news right off the bat. But before we do, I want to introduce the co-host for the show. So we have almost a full cast today. Welcome, folks. We have Nistan, we have Yam, and we have Wolfram. And Yam is already happy. I think I know why Yam is happy. But we definitely should talk about why all of us are here very happy on 8:30 a.m. Pacific time. Yeah, folks, welcome. How are things? I will just say, before I'm going to ask you what is the most important thing in AI that you have this week, I posted yesterday that this is the slowest week in AI in the past 2.5 years that we've been doing the show. As I was preparing the notes for today, it was not a lot, folks. It was not a lot. For the first time in, I honestly don't remember for how long. But then we had some breaking news. So with that, welcome Yam, Peleg, welcome Wolfram, welcome Nistan. Yam, you seem the happiest so far, so let's start with you. What is the one most important AI thing that you had this week?
Well, Kimi ships. Kimi ships. Absolutely. Just dropped. Breaking news as the show started.
Nistan, what's up?
Yeah, I actually really liked the new cursor integration for a web agent. You have a little window of a browser. And I think cursor really pulled it off. So I like that one.
Houston and Wolfram, welcome, sir, from the spaceship with your makeup on finally.
Greetings, and I'm also excited, like Yam said, if one of my favorite models gets the thinking model, and it is so good in the benchmarks, then I definitely am super excited. So Kimi has always been one of my favorite models since it came out, Kimi K2. And yeah, I'm excited about this. I checked OpenRouter, it's not there yet, but as soon as I can actually use it.
It's already there. From another breaking news for you from 5 minutes ago. It's on OpenRouter.
Great.
Straight up from the Kimi folks.
Excellent.
Alrighty, folks. So I think with this, we can probably get started with the show. I will just say mine, probably because we love open source here, right? So Kimi K2 releasing a thinking model that is 1 trillion parameters is definitely mine, with only 30 to be active. We're going to chat about Kimi as much as possible, folks. It just came out. We didn't have time to react or test it. This week, I had a chance, because it was like a fairly slow week, I had the chance to finally get to some long-awaited automations that I wanted to do for Thursday. I did them with NA10, which is the kind of the workflow builder that many people use and many people love. And I gotta say, after a fairly steep learning curve, I got to a point where I have something that works, and even tested it out on Kimi this morning. I kind of do the same motions to bring you the news, and I need a specific format. I think I talked about this. And so I built that out, and I would love to show you later on the show. So if you're tuning into the show and you never tried NA10 and you want to know what's that whole thing all about, it doesn't require any code, well, almost any code. And what little code it requires, you can probably use AIs to help you with, as I did. All right. So before we start the show, folks, today is going to be a very interesting show. We're going to start with open source. I kind of underestimated how much open source is going to be talked about, but it's going to be fine. We will also have a guest on the show today, because there's a whole thing with MCPs not being the right format for AIs because blah, blah, blah. We'll figure that out. To help us understand this, we have Kenton Varda from Cloudflare joining us a little bit later. Kenton is one of the authors on the code mode post that I think we mentioned once before, but we'll mention why this is relevant to this week in a bit as well. So please stick around. We have a great guest. This is the TLDR for November 6th. Let's go. Alrighty. This is everything that we have, including the breaking news from the AI news world in November 6th for ThursdAI. The host and guest today, well, you know me, my name is Alex Volkov. I'm the AI evangelist with weights and biases. We also have our co-host here, Wolfram here, Nistan, Yam, Peleg, and maybe LDJ and Ryan will join a bit later. And our guest for today is Kenton Varda from Cloudflare. Kenton is head of engineering for the Workers platform, but also did some work on MCP. In open source, there's not a ton of news this week besides the big one that was just announced as breaking news. Small training playbook from Hugging Face was released, because they basically dropped a book It's a 200-page end-to-end guide to pre-train and operate LLMs, including like post-training and other things. It's really, really really extensive. We're definitely going to point the finger to say, hey, if you are training models and you're interested in the latest and greatest, the folks from Hugging Face released the mecca for that knowledge. Folks from AI2, Allen Institute for AI, released Alma Earth. It's like foundational models and end-to-end platforms, fast, high reasoning, Earth intelligence. And then also Moonshot AI releases Kimi K2. It's a 1 trillion parameter MOE agent with 256 context window and a huge tool calling capacity. This is insane, folks. We definitely have to talk about this. Like, they claim some incredible stuff. State of the art on humanity's last exam, beating GPT-5, beating cloudflare with 4.5 thinking. This is an open source model that beats the main guys. This is insane. We're going to get to this in a moment. We're going to move on to big companies and LLMs and APIs. And there we have some news, not a crazy amount of news, but we did have finally an announcement from Apple. As you all know, we're waiting for Apple Intelligence to pick up and become something. And then we have an announcement that Apple will pay roughly $1 billion a year, which doesn't sound that much if you consider Apple's size and the amount of money they pay for Google search, to license a custom 1.2 trillion parameter Google Gemini model for revamped Siri. We've been waiting for Apple for a long time, and we'll talk about what this means. But it's really funny that Apple, after all this time, is just going to get Google's model. Also, in the big companies, Amazon has sued Perplexity. You guys seen this? Legal threat to block the Comet AI assistants from shopping on Amazon. And I have a lot to say on this topic. A lot. As I told you before, my browser is my browser. I don't want the companies to decide what I can and cannot do and which tools I can use. And if I have a mouse that auto-clicks or I have an AI that auto-clicks, they shouldn't give a damn. So I was pissed about Amazon's attempt here. Specifically because Amazon was all over the place in news this week. They also announced a multi-year strategic infrastructure partnership with OpenAI. So basically, OpenAI will get GPUs wherever it can get them, and Amazon will work with OpenAI, but also will sue Perplexity. Probably a completely different team. I think that's pretty much it on the big companies, folks. Unless you have anything big that I missed, we will move forward.
Not from the big companies. I have some open source stuff.
Yeah, you want to add some open source stuff to the TLDR super quick?
Yeah, there's a new model. It's Longcat Flash Omni. So it's Longcat Flash Omni. It's an open source 560 billion, 27 active Omni model, which does text, image, audio, video input and does text and speech output. So that is a new model. And there's Oro, ByteDance's new Apache license, 1.4 billion, 2.6 billion, 2 versions. Looped language model. So this is a research model, which is not a large language model, but a looped language model that goes through the same layers multiple times to improve its results. So that is a research preview that also just came out.
All right. Robotics. We're going to talk about this humanoid robot from Xpeng that exploded all over my timeline. Xpeng released a Chinese company, and they presented the Iron humanoid robots, supposedly production 2026. And for some reason, they have a man robot and a woman robot. And we should absolutely discuss why that separation is needed in humanoid robotics and why are they doing this. So we definitely want to chat about that and whether or not people here will get a humanoid robot. And then this week's buzz is turning into this week's tutorial where I want to show you some stuff. This week specifically, I've built some automations for us here at ThursdAI, and they have been built with AI agents inside N8N. I would love to show you what that's about. And then I separated coding with AI into a separate category this week. We have a new segment called Coding with AI, and we have some news. So Anthropic released a very interesting blog post that says that it's very interesting. From the company that brought us MCP, they brought a blog post that say, hey, we're all using MCP wrong, and the way to use this is to have LLMs write code to execute against the MCP spec. So in order to talk about this, apparently Cloudflare already explored that idea with code mode, and we have Kenton Varda here to talk to us about why that's the case. And they released their blog post a while before Anthropic. That's a very interesting discussion, definitely just for coders. The Cognition Windsurf released code maps and the AI-annotated navigatable maps of your code base powered by SWE 1.5, which we talked to you about last week. And that is really, really cool. So we'll talk with Kenton as well. And then, Nistan, you also mentioned that you had a coding-related cursor thing from this week, I think. Can you give me like a one-line summary of what cursor added? I haven't followed.
They added in IDE browser. So they're doing what browser-based
Yeah, I
does,
saw this.
but in IDE. And it was very performant. So that's what I noticed. It was actually very fast.
I saw
As
tweets
someone
from folks.
that makes these things, that was impressive to look at.
I saw tweets from folks that say Cursor is my new browser and showing their browsing X in the window pane of Cursor and having Cursor run automations. In tools and gadgets, the last thing that I have, folks, as I told you, besides Kimi, not a huge week. Sandbar launches something called Stream. It's a voice first personal assistant that exists in a ring. So their AI hardware assistant format is a ring. So that's very interesting how that's going to work. And I think it's time for us to dive into the show, folks. It's not that big as a week and we're in TLDR for forever. Let's dive into open source, I think.
There's Maya 1, which is a new voice generation model,
Ooh.
which it benchmarks even bad Chatterbox, for instance. So I put the link in the channel, and this seems very interesting as well.
Alrighty. I will definitely take a look at the link where you sent the link. I also saw, if we're talking about voice already, I saw that artificial analysis posted. Whoa. What's going on? Apologies,
The
folks.
Whisper thing.
Yeah, you see this, the in-world voice AI? Yeah, okay. So in-world TTS is supposedly number one on TTS and artificial analysis. I haven't heard about in-world, so might as well put it in here. In-world. So, folks, as you tune in, you notice that some news get updated as we kind of understand them as well. But definitely worth starting with open source and breaking news there and then.
For speech to text, they also did an update that Whisper is no longer the number one open source. And they posted that now NVIDIA's Canary, for example, or Parakeet, and even Voxtral Small from Mist, they did very well as well.
I saw this, and my question to them was, is it multilingual or just English that they're testing?
Yeah, most important question.
All right, let's dive in. Let's start the show. And we'll start with open source. Open source AI, let's get it started. And we are getting started with open source AI. And I'm considering to talk about everything that's not Kimi super quick so we can talk about Kimi at length. And then I can hit that breaking news button. Folks, in open source, I want to highlight like one more thing. As I highlighted in the TLDR, we have a book, essentially, from Hugging Face. There's a whole like book on training and post-training models on Hugging Face. I'll just briefly go through this. I don't know, folks, Yam, if you have a chance to take a look at that, if you want to give any comments on the depth of how much folks released there.
Book is an understatement, man. That thing is interactive. I mean, I saw it, I thought, okay, that's cool. It has a lot of visuals and so on. But then I realized the whole thing is interactive. Maybe I can even show you. The thing is insane. It's not just you think about the data when you think Hugging Face and small LM and so on. But no, that thing goes through everything, through the architecture. It goes through everything from the ground up, shows you all the alternatives. Just click the link and scroll. It's beautiful as it is. I mean, it explains itself. Basically, they just went and experiment, reverse engineer so many details that we didn't know, just brute forced them through experiments, detail that usually kept behind closed doors of the people that trains large frontier language models, and Hugging Face just experimented them out and just shared with us. You see alternative ways of constructing a model, constructing a data set, constructing evals, whatever aspect that you think, you have all the different alternatives, and like what happened if you try them, like what is the result of the experiments if you happen to go and choose this or that, and it just goes on and even ends up with how do you train on distributed system with many GPUs, which is not trivial at all. They also have a completely different section with like 200 pages about that only.
I will just say the folks who released this been on the show, Eli Bakoch, and there's like a whole thread that discusses the whole book as well. It's very, very, very extensive. And obviously Hugging Face built and trained small LM in their own family of models that they released, and they like based on that experience. All right, yeah, we're seeing now. Just make it larger a little bit, yeah.
So I just wanted to just show everyone how beautiful that thing is. I mean, it starts with some charts, but you go down and just look at this thing one moment.
And it auto switches to dark mode on your system.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is the real power of vibe coding. You want to make a visualization and show everyone the thing that you're talking about, you could just generate that today. Guys, this is HTML.
I would have paid for this.
Absolutely. I want to show you the rope, which is...
Can you remind folks what rope is?
Sure. So positional encoding, transformers. Look at this visualization.
Yeah, it looks dope.
Okay, basically positional encoding, language models, transformers can't distinguish between the position of the tokens unless you specify exactly, like you add this information somehow into the model. There are many ways to do this. One of the most popular is rope, rotary positional encoding. And there is a little bit of math about what exactly is going on here, but I mean, I haven't seen this visualization ever. If you appreciate this immediately, and it just goes on, the whole thing is just about tokenization. And I want to share your GPUs. That thing is interactive.
Oh wow!
It's just an amazing resource. Absolutely.
I think insane for them, but also we should say, and we should bring Eli to talk about this a little bit at length. They live the spirit of open source, and this is like part of the release. Not only releasing models and putting infrastructure to release models, they also, this is obviously great for everybody who wants to train stuff. There's tons of information here, inside information, and it's really, really extensive. So shout out to the Hugging Face folks for this. Folks, let's move on. We're moving on to the next thing in open source. We're going to talk about, we can mention that AI2, Allen Institute released Alma Earth, which is, I'll just show this back here. They have foundation model for planetary insights, which is Earth observation foundational models, end-to-end platform designed to run terabytes of satellite, radar, elevation, and map layer data into decision-ready maps and alerts in hours or days instead of months or years. Anything we want to mention about this, folks? Have you take a look at this? I think it kind of went under the radar this week. It was very chill, but we should shout out Allen Institute. They're not only building LLM. This is not an LLM. This is like a very specific research tool. Righty. Okay, and I think it's time for our breaking news and the thing that we are all excited to hear. And this just happened 45 minutes before the show. Let's get it. AI breaking news coming at you only on ThursdAI. Alrighty, the breaking news for today is that even as of 45 minutes ago, the team at Moonshot released Kimi K2 Thinking. It's an open source 1 trillion parameter model. It's a mixture of expert model with only around 32 billion parameter actives. It has 256,000 tokens in the context window and an insane tool calling capacity. I think they're talking about 200 up to 300 sequential tool calls without human intervention. They're not talking about how long the agent can run for. They're specifying specifically how many tool calls it can run in sequence, which I haven't seen other models talk about, so it's hard to compare, but definitely very exciting. On the evals, Mr., you want to help me cover the evals thing? I'll just shout out that the Humanities Last Exam here. On Humanities Last Exam, which we know is a kind of...
Humanities Last Exam. Last Exam copy of real copy untitled.
Final, yes.
Final. Yeah.
And they also mentioned this in the blog. We should mention this as well, that giving a model access to the internet, to Hugging Face specifically, cheats on Humanities Last Exam somehow. I'm not sure. They mentioned that. We should take a look. They get a crazy 44.9% beating GPT-5 and Claude Sonnet 4.5 thinking on this supposedly very, very hard last exam, which is, obviously some bullshit. So what else is very interesting here? BrowseComp. I haven't seen about BrowseComp. I don't remember BrowseComp as a eval. They're getting 60% here. AIME is quite crazy, 94 on AIME with no tools. And then with tools, I think they have with Python, they get 99%. And with reasoning heavy, they get 100% on AI.me, such as GPT-5. So basically, AI.me is toasted. AI.me is an International Math Olympiad in 2025. So basically, a bunch of questions. This model gets 48 versus higher than 4.5 Sonnet and very close to GPT-5. It gets 84, folks, on GPK Diamond. Hopefully, you guys are seeing what I'm showing. Yes. I will say again, this is a open source model. Although it's a 1 terabyte open source model, this is an open source model. And on every benchmark here that they've posted, that they tested against GPT-5 and Claude Sonnet 4.5, and they also tested against DeepSeek and Grok 4, they're either beating or very close up there with bigger models. Your reaction to this?
It's a really good model overall. Everyone loves it. Everyone that uses it just extremely happy with it. It's different.
And the non-thinking one, you mean? Like, because not a lot of folks are using this one from an hour ago, but yeah.
I've already started using it now that it's on Open Router, and my first impression is really, really good. So I love it. Even in German, the writing style is there. So Kimi has always been very special in that regard. Not your usual AI slop, it's very different, and multilingual very well. So yeah, I'm very excited about this new release, and I will use it with my MCP service.
100%. The reasoning part is really, really something. I had a chance to, as the we sometimes do, with Beth and Ice Cubes. And I think besides the fact that like these models always answer this one correctly, the thing that we can get is like looking at the reasoning, and the reasoning for Kimi just feels different, just reads different. So here we are, we're in Open Router, we're testing Kimi, and you can see the reasoning traces stream like as they go. And let's read some of this. Just how, if
you get
I'm able
access to it through API, because this is something that is unique to DeepSeek.
It's on the Kimi's API and also I think in Open Router, and I think Kimi API supports the Anthropic angle. And one of the things that the model gets to, and the reasoning traces, they read differently than Quens, for example. Again, the question that we're asking here, folks, reminder for those who are not with us when we ask this question, is something about a few questions from the simple bench, 20 questions. They're designed to trick LLMs specifically to look into the calculation part of the question, whereas the phrasing there is very confusing to LLMs. So the question is, how many whole ice cubes are going to remain inside a pan at the end of the 3rd minute? The emphasis is on the whole, and the reason is, like, we all intently understand the ice cubes melt the moment they touch a hot pan. This is like a physics understanding that humans have, innate understanding. This question is meant to trick LLMs. They usually answer by calculating how many times, numbers, whatever. Reasoning models are usually very good at repeating and thinking through the process and saying, okay, what did the user intend? So I did see Kimi go into the options and try to rethink this, but for now, I'm still not getting an answer, and it's been a while.
It's thinking a lot compared to other models. It's not very fast. I think a lot of people might be hammering it, and the only service that is using it is their own. So it's their own hardware at capacity, not other providers yet. And it reasons a lot and very in detail. That is also much more in detail than most other models I've recently seen.
It's working pretty okay, actually. With it just plugs in right. Oh yeah, it just works.
What exactly works this? Can you
I did a cloud code proxy, and I'm using the Kimi K2 Thinking model. I just plugged it right in, and it just went to work right away. Nice. And I can show it.
It'll be great, actually.
Show us.
I want to know I want to see how you do it.
Because for now, Kimi is still thinking about and it's been over 2 minutes, I think, at this point. Kimi is still thinking about my
tokens?
ice cubes. Still getting tokens? It's streaming the reasoning.
The pricing is also interesting because it has the same pricing for the thinking and non-thinking models, at least on Open Router and I guess on Kimi as well, on Moonshot AI. So you don't pay extra for the reasoning, you just pay the more tokens it is.
Okay, so the way that this works is like you just start off with a proxy, and then you do the proxy URL. I'm just localhost 8069, and I can just say review the repo, start to subagents to review. And yeah, it's sending the calls now to Kimi K2. And by the way, this is my own OS. It works. It was a little bit slow, but it did do a to-do list. Yeah, it's working right away. And I can see the calls here. I can see the proxy calls going to Kimi. And that's not really starting the sub-agents yet, but it just plugs right in. Latest Claude code 2.0.34. What's it today? November 6th. It just works right away with thinking on. You can just plug this in. It started doing tasks. Maybe if somebody from the audience wants me to plug something in, let it go for like 30 minutes, see if it builds something, we can. But this works. Like you can just use this as a Claude proxy, and it just works.
I think Kimi exposes a Anthropic compatible API even without the proxy. Because what you're doing is plugging in the OpenAI API, right? And then turning it into a Cloud API. If I remember correctly, Kimi is exposing Anthropic, like Kimi themselves, the API tier in Kimi. I would just say for now that, well, Newton looks it up, that I'm still waiting, folks. This is a little bit kind of like sad. I think maybe my stream got stuck of the answer, but like you can see all of this reasoning went into the question. Again, these questions like are meant to trick LLMs and put them in the loop, but I was expecting an answer by now and I didn't get one.
This is good. This is very good. I told it just like review the code base, start sub-agents. It just worked. It did to-do lists. Yeah, this just works with Claude Code. You can just swap this in with Claude Code for 60 cents in, $2 out.
Yeah.
This is great.
All right, let's talk about the capabilities of this model super quick and then tell the folks what we're here to tell them.
Just one thing, Alex, because you didn't get a response. I think that is their server, because there's only the official Moonshot AI that is providing the model right now, and I've had stream errors as well.
Say, even before it gets stuck, look at how much reasoning it did for this question, and it went back and forth, and we saw this before. It went back and forth and like tried to understand things, but here's some parts of the reasoning. Perhaps the puzzle expects that each minute half of the ice cubes melt away, and then it goes like, not integer. Or it's very interesting to see the reasoning traces, and Kimi has always been, even the regular model, they've always been a little bit different in how they train them. So like very good models, many people like them from that perspective. So again, very long context here, 256 tokens for the reasoning models. Use Kimi K2 Thinking. I think the highlight, we were asking about this, they're releasing the reasoning content here. So like they add this to the fields in OpenAI SDK, and also I think in Anthropic SDK as well, in streaming output. This model, as far as I saw, is this multi-step tool call. They say the Kimi K2 Thinking is designed to perform deep reasoning across multiple tool calls, enabling it to tackle higher complex tasks. To get reliable results, include the entire reasoning content from the context. The model will decide which parts are necessary and forward them to further reasoning. And I want to highlight that, like when we had, you guys remember we had the Minimax 2, we had Skylar Meow on the show, and he basically said the same thing. For Minimax M2 to work reliably and much significantly better, something called interleaved thinking is needed, where you pass backwards to the model the reasoning traces as well. And for models like OpenAI's models, that's not necessarily possible. They don't expose the reasoning traces to you. But for open source, they noticed that like it's significantly better to send not only the inputs and outputs, which most chatbots do, but also to pass the reasoning tokens back.
Actually, they just added this for, I think it was Minimax M2. And Kimi uses it as well. And by the way, for OpenAI models, they use the responses API, which does the interleaved thinking, where it's encrypted. So the reasoning traces are still there.
All right, so what else can we talk about the model here? We can take a look at some of the evals here. Basically, I think the highlight there is the sequential tool calls, but I'm thinking about the context window, 256. If they talk about 200 to 300 sequential tool calls that this model can go for, and for agentic use cases, keep going and keep calling tools and reasoning about them. I think this is the highlight of the agentic model era, and it looks like, at least based on their evals, this is something notable. Every other lab, as we said, measures this by just time to run.
I must say that on this topic, I don't have an eval that I trust specifically, simply because vibes and like real life, you can give Codex a single prompt, which is not that elaborate with the PRD document and so on, and it will go off for an hour and come back, done. And it will do whatever, like called a million tools in the middle, you don't really know what's happening.
Yeah.
It's not the same with Claude. Claude is more like iterative, which is extremely useful as well. It's just a different method of working. So when people say you can call this and that tool or send it for this and that time, it really depends on the use case. And I haven't seen any, unless you guys know any evil that you really trust in this topic, I haven't seen any evil that really represent this.
As far as agentic runtime, I think METR is the place where I go to for those evals. Meter, they're showing agent execution in hours, basically. And I think that this is like a metric that folks are looking into. Not necessarily whether or not it'll give you the task at the end correctly, but just like for how long it will work to give you a task correctly. I saw a funny thing about this where somebody said GPT-5 goes off on 45 minutes, comes back, wrong answer, and then Composer 1.5 13 seconds comes back, wrong answer. And so, like, you know, at least you fail faster with the faster models as well. I will say that let's just stick to the open source like nature where we are right now. Kimi K2 Thinking is, I think they also have built-in tools in the API as well, like web search and precise tool calling abilities. It remains to be seen still. Every time a model like this releases, especially like a new reasoning model, like as we just said, interleave thinking is part of how their API works, for example, built in. And we'll see other providers put it up. Hopefully we'll put it up also on WB Inference and tell you guys about this and give you some tokens. It takes time to shake out how to exactly use the model in what sense. So Kimi K2, one of the leading reasoning coding models coming out from China, fully open source. I think Apache 2, I haven't looked fully. Technical report is also available. Very interesting.
Very, very detailed. And it's very detailed. You get the real thing. I'm reading it right now. It's brilliant.
So we're in the technical blog post of Kimi K2 Thinking, and now we have graphs that compare them to GPT-5 and to Sonnet 4.5 Thinking, the absolutely latest and greatest models. They don't have Grok in here, very interestingly, but that's all right. And on agentic reasoning, Humanity's Last Exam, they get 44.9%, beating both other models on Humanity's Last Exam. That's fine. But we don't see the same benchmarks. We do see SWIBench verified. So Kimi Thinking is 71%, GPT-5 is 74%, and Sonnet is the absolute beast at 77%. So not quite beating the top labs, but again, this is an open source model versus the latest and greatest. Like we see open source catch up.
You got to see the demos.
Let's go.
Exactly. Just look at what Kimi made, like the examples.
Oh, okay. So we're looking at some examples, and there's videos of things that Kimi built. And we're seeing multiple examples. This one is a math explainer, visualization of gradient descent. This is dope.
Bro,
this is great.
That's insane.
That's insane. Here is a simulation of virus attacking cells in the bloodstream. Wow, this looks incredible. And the virus type is replicating. Oh, this is cool. Yeah.
Click 5. Yeah.
What's 5? 5 is a video that shows us a beat simulator. A beat simulator. The music actually plays, folks. You can't hear it on the stream probably because I'm sharing the screen. The browser comp is a benchmark for agentic reasoning. And we can see an example here with how many searches the reasoning called. And this is insane. Look at this. I'm scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And the model just like went into deep research mode and just like kept like reasoning and then search, reasoning and search. This is, wow. Okay.
Okay, I take everything I said back about being skeptic. I mean, I need to try, but
yeah,
come on, that thing is crazy.
Yes.
It's a bit of a disappointment that the benchmarks they did compared with just ChatGPT on Sonnet. I would like to see it compared to GLM and Quen as well. That would be very interesting.
Yeah. There's also something about Int4 and low bit quantization inference. And listen, you're probably going to be interested about this as well. They tested all of their, I think all of the benchmark were posted are in Int4 precision. So they got like a speed up of 2x generation speed while achieving state-of-the-art performance. That's very interesting. I think to summarize, we went a little bit deeper here because again, the release is new. We didn't have as much time to dive in before the show to prep and like organize notes for you guys. But this seems like an absolutely state-of-the-art model in the open source. Probably gonna rise and beat M2 Max. We'll see. The scores look absolutely insane. I agree with Wolfram. Like it's a bit sad that they didn't compare to the previous open source in SOTA. For example, the M2 Max, but it's all right. Shout out to the Kimi team, the Moonshot team for this release. And I think it's time for us to move on, folks.
Super. Considering that Quen Max, for instance, which is also a great Quen model, is not open source, but they made their thinking model open source.
Yeah. Worth chatting about footnotes. They show something that we selectively employ a subset of tools and reduce the number of tool calls under the chat mode in Kimi. So when you chat on Kimi.com, you may not get to the exact same scores. And it's very interesting that my test failed because of probably everybody's rushing to their service to try it. But still, like, it should be a little bit more robust than this as far as I'm concerned. Folks, let's move on to big companies and APIs. We have just a few more things that Wolfram you mentioned in open source. So we'll just mention them and move on. There's a new open source Omni model called Longcat Flash. It's a end-to-end spoken interaction, 128 context window. And I don't know what SCMOE is, but like it's a 560 billion MOE Omni model. 27 billion parameter active.
It's on their webpage and they have Android and iOS apps.
Oh, they have iOS apps for this? Oh, wow. I think it's time to move to big companies and talk a little bit about that. What do you guys think? Yeah, let's do that. So in big companies, I think we should start with... cheers. Thank you for joining us today. Folks, we should start with OpenAI's just massive claim to taking over every possible compute provider in the world. So OpenAI announced this week, or I guess AWS announced this week, new multi-year strategic partnership between AWS and OpenAI, where AWS will provide cloud infrastructure for OpenAI to do inference, to scale GPT, large-scale training as well, and inference in agentic workloads. This is I think, $38 billion deal. And
I once knew a tech company that didn't partner with OpenAI. There is none at this point. Like everyone is partnering with OpenAI.
But now we have OpenAI doing business with AWS out of all places. AWS, Amazon's Web Services. And there's this graphic here that I wanted to show super quick and discuss this on the show from the Kobeissi letter, which they talk about like economics, etc. OpenAI now has... Here's a list of things that OpenAI did deals with. $500 billion Stargate deal with SoftBank, I believe, and Oracle. Right, folks? Correct me if I'm wrong. $100 billion NVIDIA deal, which $100 billion AMD deal. And now $38 billion Amazon deal. $25 billion Intel deal with Intel. $20 billion TSMC. $13 billion Microsoft. $10 billion Oracle. And there's also a multi-billion dollar Broadcom deal. This is a lot of money. I'm like roughly counting. And I think if you guys remember from last week, we showed Sam talk somewhere about having, during the OpenAI restructuring live stream, Sam talked about 1.4 trillion overall commitment to GPUs. Everybody's asking, where's the money going to come from? It's a very, very good question, honestly, to see where's the money going to come from, because OpenAI is essentially like losing money and the company is only valued at 500 billion generally. And I think all of these deals kind of add to the valuation somehow, but it's unclear how all of this is going to get paid for. And Sam Altman went on a podcast where he was asked directly, and his answer to this was basically, we're going to make a lot of money this year, way more than you thought. To the investor, he got a little bit pissed off, and he said, if you want to sell your shares, I'll gladly find somebody who would buy them off you, as an answer, which is a very, very interesting answer. But then they posted about we're not actually fighting. We're good friends. This was just a remark. So going back, OpenAI looks absolutely terrifying in how quickly they take over the world. The other thing that's worth maybe mentioning is how much of the US economy and the stock market is now propped by AI and these deals. And some of these deals are kind of recursive, where OpenAI pays NVIDIA, and then NVIDIA pays OpenAI, and then OpenAI pays somebody else, and they pay NVIDIA. And I think the highlight of all of this is that at some point this week, OpenAI CFO floated the idea that the US government should kind of like backstop or insure these deals, because we're getting to a point where OpenAI is like too big to fail. Because if this fails, the economy will absolutely crash. We're talking about trillions of dollars right now. I don't remember offhand the GDP of US, but like I'm pretty sure like if something happens to OpenAI, stock market will follow
Oh yeah, they are pretty much entangled with NVIDIA
Yep.
at the moment, and NVIDIA is pretty much single-handedly pulling the stock market. So yeah, absolutely, it's going to influence the stock market. I just, just quick note. Many people saying it's a bubble, but this money is coming from cash the companies have. It's not out of thin air. Yeah, it's like it's musical chair kind of way, like transferring hands. But at the end of the day, it's coming from a real stockpile of cash. So I think people kind of miss that when they say it's a bubble, because the money is real.
We mentioned about the bubble part on the show multiple times, and the thing with the bubble is we may not think that the AI itself is a bubble. I definitely don't see a stop to inference, like with the way things are going, and we can talk about why in a second. But it could be an economic kind of overexcitement where everybody's like trying to invest stuff when there's not a lot of things to be done with it. So we'll see. I think it's very important to show that like literally OpenAI is partnering with every major cloud, Amazon, Google, with everyone. I think that even this Kabasi layer thing, there was a deal with Google, I'm pretty sure, and it's not here at some point with OpenAI. It's really hard to keep track as well at this point. I actually want to move on to other deals that happen in the big companies and APIs. Apple, folks, Apple will pay roughly $1 billion a year to license a custom 1.2 trillion parameter Google Gemini model. So Apple will make Siri smarter with Gemini. I think I saw somewhere they tested different models in different pricing points, and OpenAI obviously already has an integration with Apple. And I think it looks like they landed on Gemini. They tested ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini before selecting Google. So it's interesting that this is the first time that we see a size of Gemini. This is a 1.2 trillion parameter version of Google Gemini, which probably means that the actual Gemini is larger than this, because Kimi is 1 trillion parameters, right? Gemini is probably larger. Apple intelligence model is 150 billion, so this is like 8 times larger. It's going to run on Apple's private cloud, which is supposedly better for compute, and data stays walled from Google. I think this is the most interesting part. So it's not an API deal. It's an actual, hey, Apple, here's the model that we trained that you can run. Almost like open source, but not really open source. So we're not going to get it. Only Apple's going to get this one. And Apple will pay $1 billion, a cool $1 billion annually.
Do you remember the amount Apple spent a day? You remember these reports from 2 years ago? Because we can all get back to remember if you really want to. Apple is spending a lot of money a day training a language model. This is the piece from, I think, 2023 sometime, that at the peak of the craze of ChatGPT, we got the report that Apple is spending so much money every single day training their own. I don't know what they actually did with it, but like, it's weird. Apple has pockets, has talent, has compute, has what is going on.
On the other side of the world, even smaller companies are releasing open models, and Apple, nothing happening there.
Yeah, there was talk about Apple like buying Perplexity at some point. Nothing materialized, but yeah, it's weird. We didn't see anything coming from Apple themselves. But hey, as a user, I don't care. Like as long as Siri is gonna be not dumb, and I keep waiting for Siri to not be dumb, and it's not happening. Alrighty, I think that this is mostly on the big companies as far as I saw. The last thing that I want to talk about is this like very annoying thing. Perplexity AI, the search company that takes on Google, posted on their blog post that they got a threatening email from Amazon that says that they require Perplexity to prevent the Comet browser agentic agent to stop using Amazon.com. A legal threat to a agentic company to have them prevent that agent from running on a specific website. I find that absolutely abhorrent. I just want to mention that like this makes no sense. And Perplexity replied and said, bullying is not innovation, with a whole blog post that says, hey, we will definitely not use this. And I find it very interesting. Previously, we chatted about like Cloudflare, for example, working to automatically block AI agents from your websites unless you permit this with robots.txt. And I always thought that there was a difference between automatic AI agents that I can like run up and scale versus an in-browser thing that behaves like me and does the shopping for me or whatever. there may not be an actual technical reason to differentiate them, but I always thought that the reason why OpenAI released the browser, for example, in Comet, is that this browser has access to everything as me, logged in as me, does stuff as me, versus the browser that I can run as agents, Manus and the previous OpenAI operator and stuff like this. They kind of like spin up an environment somewhere. I have 17 of them do some stuff. To me, there is a difference between them. One operates as me, one is kind of like just does tasks for me, but not as me necessarily. And because the one in the browser acts as me, I don't see any option for companies to block access to it, because how would those companies know if it's me or my agent?
I can run Claude with computer use that just controls my computer, move the mouse.
Yep.
That's literally me. That's me on the computer. It's like I take my friend and put him in front of the screen and tell him, go and buy something on Amazon for me on my computer. Right now, you can distinguish them technically because you can find the user agent, but that's just a technicality. It's really on the wrong side of history, no doubt, because the next step is you need to block Google Chrome, and good luck with that. So I don't see where it's going.
And we are talking about AI assistants, so I want my AI assistant to be treated like a human assistant. It shouldn't matter if I set my Amy or my wife to buy something on Amazon. I send a message and say, okay, I want this, buy it. Why should it differentiate if it is an AI agent or if it's my wife or an employee or something? So just because of advertisement or anything, that is like saying specific people are not allowed to go to my site. It's not like it's abusing the Amazon system itself. If it's buying and it's a legitimate purchase, what is the issue?
Yeah.
I think it should be allowed.
Perplexity takes the same exact position as we take and say the future of user agent. User agents are exactly that, agents of the user. They're distinct from crawlers, scrapers, or bots. User agent is your AI assistant. It has exactly the same permissions you have, works only at your specific requests, and acts solely on your behalf. And I like, we're getting to a point, at least I'm getting to a point, folks. I know that like sometimes on the show, we talk about the latest and greatest, and we bring you some tools, and many people don't use these tools. Many people don't know they exist, for example. But we are here to give you kind of like where things are going. And where things are going is everybody will have things like this working on their behalf pretty much everywhere. And after our conversation with Kenton in a moment, I'll tell you about my journey with N8N, for example, and how I used Atlas for that. We're moving toward the point where like all of this is becoming second nature to many folks. And for Amazon to try and bully the company that's smaller than them, to just force them legally to do so, it's very interesting. Amazon is a huge company with a lot of lawyers. And Perplexity is big-ish as a startup, but not, obviously nowhere close to Amazon scale. So this bullying will not stand, and F you, Amazon. Bezos should come back and tell people to stop doing this bullshit. But I want my AI assistant to be able to do the things that I want as well. So shout out to Perplexity for taking a stand on this topic, by the way. Perplexity has gained a lot of my respect with this stance and response, and the fact that they are fully transparent about this as well.
Just one thing.
Yeah,
because we can't directly boycott Amazon, it's so big and we use it all the time, but we could tell our agent to avoid them and go to the source and buy from them.
They can lose some. The bigger this
I just want to say, it's all of this is moving towards everyone is sticking sticks in everyone's wheels. We also saw Meta blocking OpenAI on WhatsApp, which is, I don't know, uncool. It's not a cool move at all.
I think Meta blocked everyone. Like, I think Meta changed Meta just said, we're going to change the terms of use on WhatsApp that only we can offer AI tools as automated bots. Also, semi not cool, but I think it feels different because it's like, this is our platform, this is our playground, only we can offer AI.
Yeah, it's different because it's their platform.
Yeah. All righty, folks, we have to move on because we have a new interesting discussion. We're moving to our new segment of Coding with AI. I'm going to add our new guest here, Kenton Varda from Cloudflare. Hey, Kenton, because this week is very interesting. So we're moving into Coding with AI, folks. If you're coding with AI or you're doing any type of agentic applications, etc., stick with us. I want to introduce Kenton for a minute here, specifically because this week Anthropic has dropped a blog post. But this blog post is very interesting because I think around a couple of weeks ago, we celebrated the 1 year of MCP existence. MCP being Model Context Protocol, the way to give models like tools and explanations. And we talked about MCP multiple times. And MCP has kind of had a very interesting sigmoid curve of adoption, where in the beginning of the year, everybody's like, this is the only thing you could talk about. All your Twitter feed was MCP. And then at some point, kind of like all of the companies started adopting this. Google and OpenAI. OpenAI recent apps are built on top of MCP, so the spec won absolutely. However, the excitement kind of lowered a little bit, and the importance of people knowing and building everything in MCP lowered a little bit. And now Anthropic releases a blog post where they basically say something like, hey, MCP is great, but it's overloading the context for the models. These models are much better at writing code than using MCP, so why not write code to use MCP? And I was like, wait a minute. I remember a blog post like this from before. I think Cloudflare released something like this, and apparently Anthropic tagged and attributed some of the earlier work to Cloudflare in their blog post as well. That blog post was authored by Kenton as part of the Kenton and some other person. Feel free to please mention their name as well. So I want to. Yes, I welcomed Kenton to the show. I decided, hey, who better to discuss with us than the people who actually came up with this first or before Anthropic. Kenton, welcome to the show. For this long preamble, just to say, we saw your work on this before Anthropic released it. I would love for you to discuss with us what they released. But let's start with who you are, and for folks who don't know you and your first time on the pod, please give us a brief intro.
Yeah, hi, thanks for having me. I'm Kenton Varda. I started the Cloudflare Workers project at Cloudflare, which is our developer platform. Started it when I joined about 8.5 years ago. Continue to be the lead engineer on that. A lot of what we do, what we've been focusing on lately is enabling AI, AI written code or AI agents to be built on our platform effectively. The blog post that we released about a month ago, we introduced something that we called code mode. I can't completely claim to have invented it. There are other people who had a similar idea in the past. In fact, a lot of people have explored this in the past. But the idea is basically, so MCP is a protocol for exposing tools to AI agents. And they're exposed as these function calls, which is just a feature LLMs have had for a while. What we did instead, we still take MCP servers, but we take the tools, and instead of exposing them as tool calls, we convert them into a TypeScript interface, and then tell the LLM, hey, here's a programming interface you can write code against. Please write code to do whatever it is that you want to do. And we think that's for a couple of reasons. One is that LLMs have a whole lot of training data on how to write code. They have all of GitHub and such. Whereas for tool calls are sort of this artificial thing that LLMs have been built to be able to do, but they are trained sort of artificially with training set created by their developers and not on a whole world full of examples. And so it's like, it's not their native language, whereas code kind of is. And then of course, the other thing is when you're using code, you can call multiple tools. You can take the output of one and stick it into the next without having to send all of that through the neural network. So it's faster, it's cheaper, you can get more done. And Anthropic had their blog post this week basically confirming that
you guys were in the right direction. And
yeah.
I love this. And I think I saw Simon Wilson, a friend of the pod, also comment on this, and they said the exact implementation in the Anthropic blog post of how to actually achieve this is remain this draw the rest of the owl type thing. We're like, fill in the blank here. You figure out how to actually do this. Whereas MCP as a spec, they kind of said, hey, here's MCP, here's a library for MCP, here's how to use this, here's a library from servers, here's a library from clients. And here they're like, basically, we researched and realized that MCP, the way it's implemented right now, and we should show the people how it's implemented. When you add an MCP server to like Windsurf or Cursor, etc., that MCP implementation is kind of like a documentation of all the tools available and a long description for the LLM of how to use this tool. This is how the LLM knows to use the search tool versus the file tool, etc., when it has access to a bunch of tools. Very quickly, I saw that the context window of your model is getting overblown by the descriptions of these MCPs. And the more you add, the less performant it becomes because it can get confused, etc. Anthropic basically says tool definitions overload the context window and intermediate results consume additional tokens. And they're like, okay, so what do we actually do? Here's how the tool definitions look like. What do we actually do? We need to figure out a way to have the model write code. Kenton, here's my question for you. And yeah, they attributed some of the work to what you guys did, because I think you also released a way to do this, right? Like code mode is an actual implementation of such.
Yeah, so good news. We actually have working code for this that you can run today in our blog post on code mode. We extended the Cloudflare Agents SDK, but we extended ours to implement this model, and you can run it locally today. It relies on a new feature in Cloudflare Workers called dynamic isolate loading or dynamic worker loading, which basically lets you spawn workers on the fly that contain code written by the LLM and run them immediately. And this is really interesting, we think, because Workers platform has always been based on a different execution technology. Instead of using containers, we use something called isolates. They're basically JavaScript runtime environments of V8 isolates. And they start up much faster and they're much lighter weight. So if you're just trying to run a little snippet of code, you can start this up, run the one snippet, throw it away, and that's fine. That's efficient. You don't have to pre-warm anything. It takes milliseconds to do. So we think this is probably the way forward if agents of the future are all writing code behind the scenes all the time and running these little one-off snippets. But yes, we released all the code necessary to build agents this way, and we're continuing to improve it, and you can see it all in the blog post.
Yeah, so that's great. We'll add the blog post to the show notes. Kenton, the question that I have, and I think I had it back when you released code mode, and just before the question, I want to show what Anthropic claims when they can attack you as well. All this work lets agent load the definitions that it needs for the current task, reduces the token usage from 150,000 tokens to 2,000 tokens and a time cost savings of 98%. So this is insane to me. This is insane. Anthropic releases a way to define how to give model tools like superpowers a year ago. Everybody adopts this. And it takes a year for everybody to understand, or maybe less than a year in your case, maybe like 10 months, that this is counterproductive if you use many tools and there's a better way. The better way is to have the model write code. And then I'm remembering when MCP, the height of MCP excitement was there, many people were asking the question of like, why do we need another protocol where REST exists, where OpenAI exists, where the model can basically read OpenAI specs, try to understand all of your API endpoints versus the select few tools that you decided. And now we're doing this loop and we're back to, okay, the model can write code. Kenton, I'm going to put you on the spot here. If you don't have a good answer, we'll figure something out. But why would I have my AI write code for against an MCP server versus an open API server, which is a very standard like RESTful definition, what many APIs have?
Yeah, so MCP does still provide a few things that are useful here. It provides sort of a uniform way of connecting an agent to a particular service and authorizing it that didn't quite exist before. In the past, like we have OAuth for authorizing against APIs, but it's always been the case in the past that you're writing a client for an API, you're usually writing a client for a specific API. And so every OAuth service can have slightly different requirements for how you authorize and set that up. And that's okay, because every client writes to the particular service. But with agents, you want to connect every agent to every possible service, and you don't want the developers of the agent to have to know about the service you're connecting it to, or vice versa. So now it's this, instead of one to N, it's N to N. For that, a little bit more standardization is needed, and MCP is providing that. So it could be that we start to see some of those extra bits being pushed back into OpenAPI and all these other standards so that we can then more easily connect agents to all those existing things as well. I think that would be good, but we'll have to see where that goes.
So I think that it's a very interesting shift in mindset from the peak of excitement of MCP, which is like a new technology. Many people who adopted it before everybody else got very excited as MCP experts. And then we saw a bunch of MCP storefronts exist where you can look at the tools and collect tools for your LLM, etc. And we got to the curve of like, okay, how many MCPs do people actually use in their tools? That turns out not to be that much. So what's your experience as well? In the beginning of MCP, everybody was like trying tools, and everybody got left with like maybe like 2 or 3 tools in their cursor.
I definitely have more than that. And regarding MCP, I was very excited about it, not because MCP is something special, but because it was a first standardization effort that got a lot of traction. Before that, you have had AI write your own tools for every instance, for every interaction. Now you have this standard. If it writes code or calls it directly, it doesn't really matter as much as long as it gets the job done.
Yeah. And I think it's worth mentioning as well, it's confusing a little bit. The tools that we use, Cursor, Windsurf, OpenAI, ChatGPT now supports MCP, Cloud Desktop supports MCP. They are now exposed to a bunch of tools that they weren't before, even though before those tools also had their own APIs. It wasn't like, and I think this speaks to what you're saying. It's still worth figuring out, okay, this new standardization in the world of LLM makes sense, even though it gets the context window blurry.
Integration is a key thing. Now you can connect your tools or whatever you want to use to ChatGPT, to OpenWebUI, to Claude Code.
Yeah.
That is the cool thing about this, because you could not write your own code to do this with these interfaces before. And now they all hook up to the same standard. That is the USB part of the MCP, where it is a universal connector. And that is a great thing.
Yeah.
That is very useful. That's why I have so many tools. I don't use them all the time. I specifically enable them. Like if I want to ask the LLM in OpenWebUI or ChatGPT about my emails. So I can hook my email up to it and enable it, and it's only in the context if I need it.
So I think it's worth talking about the implementation that Anthropic talked about as well. And I think, Wolfram, you're basically doing manually what they are offering as a system to do and what Kenton and other folks offered as a system to do. Instead of like plugging in all of the tools, sending to the context window, here's a tool, here's how to use this, here's a tool, here's how to use this. Instead, it will basically scan the available tools and then provide just the spec of like here, like the possible tools. Anthropic is doing this via the skills feature somehow. I haven't really dove into this, but there is a difference in implementation, right?
I wanted to ask, I mean, if I get correctly, the argument is that MCPs, they sit in your context and they take away parts of the context, and that's gold, that's performance, you're leaving on the table.
Yeah,
absolutely. But what I'm saying is that, okay, what about progressive discovery through tool, through MCPs? I mean, what's the difference between this and actually generating code that uses the functions? Just so to make sure that I understand correctly, like what are we talking about?
There are meta MCP tools already and proxies that decide based on the request which MCP tools to give.
Mhm.
But if the model initially doesn't have the context, the available tools and what they can do, it can hallucinate, for instance. So that is also not a perfect solution. And I think there is no perfect solution yet, which is why this new approach about the code is a new approach.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there are really two parts of Anthropic's blog post, and only one of them was really referring to our work. The two parts were, one, using code so that you can string together multiple requests, not send everything back through the LLM intermediate results. But then the other one was this progressive discovery, where instead of putting everything in the context window up front to say, here are all the tools you have, it's a tool that lets you find out about other tools by a file system tool, and then you have to dig through the file system to find the definitions of particular APIs. And that's something we're going to be adding, because that makes a lot of sense too.
Yeah. I think this was one of the issues against MCP in the beginning, where folks basically said the discovery is still on the user and it should be on the LLM. And I think when we talked about A2A from Google, agent-to-agent protocol, they had the concept of a registry where the agent can basically go to the registry, see what are the tools that are available for me. And now we're seeing kind of Anthropic like getting there with the second part of what you said. And basically, they're doing everything via the skills thing and the file system, which we haven't dove in deeply into the skills thing. Basically, Anthropic is able to discover whatever skills they have. So now they're kind of connecting the MCP and the skills and saying, if their AI is able to go and use the file tool to go and see which skills it can have generally, then it will pull on those skills and their definitions, the full definition of how to use this, which parameters to send, what responses they will receive, like all of these full definitions that take a lot of place in the context. It will only go and tag at them when it needs to. This is the discoverability part. So it looks like Anthropic is connecting the two things. Well, it's very interesting. Kenton, thanks so much for joining us, our discussion for this. I will just shout out super quick. I did not know that you started the Workers project. I love Workers as a platform incredibly. Like I built a full startup on top of this. I was part of the first launchpad of Cloudflare Workers as well with Targum. I still have a bunch of stuff that just runs there and I don't even know where it runs. It just works entirely like automatically. So it's great to see that you guys are like, building tools for AI as well, and the Agents SDK is part of the Workers platform as well. So shout out to you for that incredible work, which I'm a very big fan of and have been for a long time. Great having you on the show. Anything else do you want to add? Where to find you? How can folks like tune into whatever you do? And shout out other folks, feel free.
Kenton Varda on Twitter or X, whatever.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. All right, folks, we are moving on to I think maybe the last piece here of coding with AI. There's like 2 launches that we had this week where both Windsurf and Cursor is not here with us, so we're not going to cover the Cursor part that he got excited about. But basically, the Cursor part is they launched an integrated web browser within the Cursor interface, and that web browser can basically show everything for you.
I also saw that they have a feature where you ask all the LLMs at the same time. They all give you their answers, and then you have an LLM that condenses the answers from everyone combined. They have a new mode for that.
Yeah. But the other thing in the world of coding is that Windsurf, which is kind of the competitor, they're launching their own like different stuff, and they launched code maps. And code maps are super, super cool. I want to show you. Let's see if I can get to a code map. Basically, they're saying that understanding the code is as much part of being very productive as running it. And so they're showing something like this. I'm going to show you an example. Without understanding what my code is, it's not going to be super clear. But still, it's going to be super cool. Let me show you the window here for Windsurf. All right. So you can see here on the right, this is the agent. And then this kind of terminal, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Here you have a new feature called Code Maps. And when you open this, you will see this kind of interface. Or you can switch to diagram view and you can see the diagram of what happens.
What exactly are these?
Okay. So as I have a bot that, let's add Nistan because it's very important. So my bot for Targum Video, the translation startup that I still own and still runs, is basically streaming from Twitter and then receives, or used to stream from Twitter when the API was available, and then gets the pings and understands the video there, downloads the video, then starts translation, then posts something else, right? This is generally kind of the bot. So I asked Windsurf to go look at the code without me saying all this that I told you, without my understanding of the code, to generate a code map that does this. So here's the code maps for this whole workflow that I've asked. All I did, by the way, is ask for like I generated new code maps and I wrote like Twitter bot video translation system. And then it went and looked for this thing. So it separated it to several flows. One of them is Twitter streaming, and it shows you which task happens when. For example, for Twitter streaming, you have to set up rules. Then we have the filtering, then the trigger validation, and then after the streaming from Twitter happens, forward the backend. Basically a way for you to understand my code, right? And this is very important when you're in a new code base. It's really hard to know what's going on. So you do code maps. And then we have the Twitter processing.
That's brilliant, actually. It's abstract, man. Abstract.
And
really
it happens
cool.
on every like really like every repo that we can have. And then you have my pipeline that it understands that I have a queue task. This, by the way, happens with Cloudflare workers here. I have a transcription generator, and then the captions thing. It literally reached out and figured out every little process. That's not easy to do. So I have another code map, for example, for my Docker install. And then it shows me exactly what installs and how it installs Docker. And I think it's brilliant because like it explains to you, I have like a very specific like Docker setup for local and then for GPU enabled machine, for example. I think it's brilliant. So shout out to the Windsurf community folks as well.
I can show you the multi-agent.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a video from the Cursor team. Just look at this. You go to agent and you do what you want. You specify how many parallel agents you want, and now you have multiple tabs for GPT-5, Sonnet 4.5, also Cursor Composer, and they all generate their answers in parallel. And I have no idea how they combine them at the end, but I guess we're going to find out. But now you have multi-processing pool of LLMs at your fingertips.
That's crazy.
That's pretty cool.
Because then if all of them got to the same answer, you kind of like, but I don't see this yet. Or maybe it's an example, or maybe I need like a Cursor Pro.
Just a video that Cursor now natively supports Git worktrace, apparently. So that's from Cursor.
Thank you for this. And all right, folks, I think the coding with AI is over. I think we have audio and video. Wolfram, are you ready? Do you want to cover some of the Maya 1 and in-world TTS super quick? And then we'll do NA10?
You can open the link for the Maya. Maybe we can play the audio back. So the thing about this is that you give it not just a text prompt, but you also describe the voice. And it creates a voice according to your specification. You can even say the gender, the age, the kind of speaking, all of these things. And so you don't have to select from a bunch of voices. You create a voice on the fly. The demo has been pretty impressive. There was a villain that was talking like a movie. It has over 20 emotion tags, real-time streaming support, and the backbone is a 3B Llama model for the understanding. So it runs on a single GPU even.
All right, let's take a listen to an example. This is a description of this voice. Female in her 30s with an American accent and is an event host, energetic and clear diction.
This place looks even better than I imagined. The lights, the music, everything feels magical. I can't stop smiling right now. After such a long week, this is exactly what I needed.
That was not the best example. Blazer, that is much, much better.
Welcome back to another episode of our podcast. Today we are diving into an absolutely fascinating topic. You dare?
That's pretty cool. And this is a tiny model and it's open sourced. Speech model built for excessive voice generation. Yeah, this is great. Apache 2 license, 3 build parameters, runs on a single GPU.
What's it called? Maya.
Yes.
Maya what?
Alrighty. Well, it's great that it's open source. So Maya 1, I'll definitely play around with this some more. And I wonder if do you know if it offers cloning or no cloning for this one?
You don't clone, you specify the voice.
You just describe. Yeah. Voice designed to natural language descriptions. Maya research. This is dope. Absolutely dope. The playground does not seem to allow the same thing, like from what you said. And the other thing in voice and audio super quick is that artificial analysis, the place where it tests multiple models, showed they have a new number one on there called in-world TTS. Also, we have an example of this. Okay. So this is in-world TTS. They claim the state-of-the-art in voice AI. It's really easy to claim state-of-the-art, but let's play. And they also have like emotional tags. Looks like angry, for example. Do they have laughter? Laughter. Let's play an example here and see and compare. It's quite a long time to
Foolish mortal, your courage will be your downfall. Soon you will learn that no one escapes from here.
My left tag didn't work, but this was really good.
Amazing.
Yeah, this sounded like solid. I can see why this is like it takes number one. It's multilingual. They have Korean, Chinese, etc. 5 million characters, $5 per million characters. It's supposedly cheap as well. They compete with Cartesian 11 Labs on world error rate as well. And they claim to be blazing fast. Again, Cartesian is less than 50 milliseconds. This is less than 250.
This is not open source, or is it?
No, it's not. It's not. It's a competitor to like 11 Labs and Cartesia. It's a whole company. All right, this is the updates in voice as well. If you want the top one, it looks like one of the new ones is, in-world TTS. A new one to remember. 11 Labs, Cartesia, in-world TTS. All right, folks, I think it's time we talked about coding with agents. We only have like 10 minutes left on the show. So despite me feeling that there's not going to be a lot to talk about, we somehow filled the show. This week, as I said, my highlight of the week was building things with AI for myself. I finally got to a point where I built an N8N workflow. What is N8N? N8N, it's spelled like just the word N8N. I'll put it in comments. It's a workflow builder that really quickly adapted to the world of AI. It's a node-based interface, which I'll show in a second, which allows you to add sequences one after another without knowing any code, and they have pre-baked things, for example. So I can show an example of something that I built, and I definitely would love folks here to also comment and say things. I have built a ThursdAI flow that will do something like very interesting.
Good comparison is to Zapier, which is a big one most people know. This is a version you can run locally. So it's partly open source. It's not fully open source as far as I know. The source code is available, and it's a German company that is behind it.
Yeah, and definitely Zapier is a competitor. But in the world of AI, I think OpenAI's kind of agent builder is also a competitor, because OpenAI agent builder is the workflow builder. And for example, for the task yesterday, I didn't even consider OpenAI's agent builder. Like this, to me, was clear that N8N needs to do this. So here is the workflow that I've built. And I hosted this on $5 a month on Hetzner, and I can talk about hosting this as well. I first started doing this locally, and then I moved in, put it in the cloud, and it took me like 2 hours for $5 a month. It's literally nothing. Here's a workflow that I built It took me around 4 hours, including learning, building the things, and learning and coding a little bit as well. What it does is a very interesting thing. For ThursdAI, we need to understand and tell you super quick what's going on. And a lot of our sources are on Twitter. And for example, Wolfram today sent me this link for, I think this is the TTS, right? The Maya one. Or another example is this morning, Kimi came out and I really needed all the right details super quick. This requires multiple steps. If you guys followed the show for a while, you may remember that the way I used to do this is with agentic AI, for example, Comet or agents. I give it a tweet, it logs into the tweet, it looks up all the links in the tweets or the thread, right? So it's not like sometimes people, because of Elon, they put the links in another reply, etc. So my agent needs to go and get that all information, then go independently into all of the links and try to figure out together from all of this context, build a context for the AI. And then an AI summarizes this and gives me a few facts to read out to you on the show. So in my case, I have the notes that I use that you guys see in the TLDR section. So it needs to also place it there. Many manual steps in there where I used to do it and I now automated this completely with a trigger from Telegram. So here's what an end-to-end workflow kind of like looks like. At first you have triggers and you have to define which triggers you have, and you can define a few triggers. They have a bunch of automations. Here I have a Telegram trigger. Basically I built a Telegram bot, and it's building a Telegram bot requires exactly 2 steps. You open Telegram, you go to Botfather in Telegram, and you say create a new bot. It'll give you an API key, and you're done. There's nothing to build there. It's like, it sounds more complex than it is. It's literally just that. Like building a Telegram bot is going to the Telegram Botfather and saying, hey, build me a new bot. It gives you an API key, which you plug in, and you're done. You basically have a way to trigger things. Also, N10 has this form submission trigger. Basically, they will build a form for you that you define the fields for, and then every field will get passed into your workflow. So this is another entry into the workflow. In my case, this is a Twitter or conversation ID. And the last one is a chat message. This is very similar to the way OpenAI API works. You have this chat interface here, and this chat interface, whatever you input here, will go to the next node as input. So you can build a chat, and then you can reply to the chat and get answers, and you can build your own chat with AI super quick as well. So I have these 3 triggers here. And what I did, I unified all of them with some code just to make sure that I can start my workflows from any of these 3. Basically, every other node will give you a different name. After this, there's a bunch of stuff to do processing for. Here is basically the workflow, the way I built it as an example. Because it requires Twitter, and so I have 2 nodes here, and it's just a HTTP request node. It's a basic request node. When you go, you don't have to code for this because you can just call any API with the credentials. The credential management here is pretty cool. You have credential management, so I'm not risking showing my credentials to you because they have credential management built into N810. You can decide which API keys you have, and then you can use them in workflows, but you're not putting the actual credential, you're just like pointing to the credential. Why this matters? This matters is because I can share this workflow with Wolfram, for example. Wolfram can run this and then use his own credentials. So I have the credentials from Twitter, and here's what I do basically. I get the first tweet with the regular Twitter API. How to wire those nodes up is that on the left, you can see all of the kind of node executions that happened before this node. Okay, so let me show you a trigger from Telegram, for example. So let me go here, executions. So here is a workflow that succeeded. For example, some of them fail, and then I will copy it to editor and I'll show you. So here is a workflow of mine that started with the Telegram node, Telegram trigger. So when you click this, you can double click this even. You can see that you got some events from Telegram, and this was the event, and a bunch of things at this event. Well, what you need to know is that there's a URL here inside the Telegram bot. It points to Twitter. What we need to get is the Twitter ID. You go to the second node and you kind of like unify this, okay? Then my code that runs and gets the Twitter ID runs here, and you can see from the URL, we extract only the ID. The ID is used for an API. So we take this ID, and on the left side of the node, you can see all of the steps preceding to it, what the input was and what the output was. This is very important because you can take the output from a previous node from before, or the output from the beginning of the flow. It's very, very useful. And then you can basically use this tweet ID inside the API here like so. to pass it forward. I think this is the connection point. This is the most interesting part about NA10 and how you connect nodes. You take an output from the previous node, and then you use this somehow in the output of the next node. In this case, I go to the Twitter API, and I need this Twitter ID as a kind of collectible. And you can see the result of this expression here. So Twitter API will go to tweets, and then the Twitter ID that I passed via the Twitter API. And then all of the other definitions for API are standard. Basically, I have some other stuff like sorting and cleaning stuff. I kind of had to get to learning how to do this because of my specific workflow, but I want to get to a point where I have an AI agent. So after I collected all my things, I now have something that kind of looks like this. I need to execute the previous things. Okay. I have the first tweet, and now I want to send it to my AI agent. It's very simple to create an AI agent in NA10 that will receive a prompt for you and respond in some response. You create an AI agent node like this, and then you connect to this node any AI that you want. In this case, this is an OpenAI. I can have Cloud Anthropic. We can have Kimi build an agent that does something with Kimi and see how that performs. Actually, maybe worth testing it out because they also have an open router extension. Do you guys want to do this super quick as an actual thing? To try and connect Kimi K2.
Test of this new model.
Yeah, okay. So Kimi K2 is probably going to be slow, but we can test it out. So
it was pretty good view on IP if you want.
Yeah, if you can send me something that I'll not show on screen directly to Kimi or Open Router, I think I have. I can get Open Router.
Steve, I think it's worth just mentioning how do you set all of this up? Because you started telling us, but like we don't know how to set it up.
Okay,
we don't know how to start.
Starting is easy enough if you know what Docker is. If you don't know what Docker is, it's easy-ish. You go to NA10 implementation, but basically where to start. You can host NA10 on your computer, or you can go to NA10 Cloud, register, and start there. That's $20 a month. If you want for free, you can host it on your computer. It takes a little bit more. The thing about this, and I really wanted to highlight before we get to implement some of the stuff, is that I used NA10 with the Atlas browser with OpenAI. And the Atlas browser was open all this time here. And I was so delighted about how quickly I was able to learn what to do with the browser looking at my workflow. Because I could ask it like, hey, especially if you have voice on, how can I replace the Summarizer GPT-5 node with an Open Router node in NA10? Atlas browser has the context. Yes, the browser itself realizes what I'm doing, and it knows NA10 because of like examples. And I used the fast GPT, and you want to swap out the Summarizer with your Open Router. Step by step, this is literally the future. I was not be able to build and do this whole NA10 workflow without the browser just telling me what to do.
Actually, the future will be when it does it.
I'm pretty sure that the agent can do it.
This time, but
yeah, I think there's an agent here, and I'm pretty sure that the agent can do it.
Cloud Code can do this through the config for sure.
Cloud testing everything.
The whole point of Cloud Code is like it's writing code. Okay, folks, Nistin gave me an API key, and so we want to replace this guy, our AI agent that summarizes in the end, with the Kimi Moonshot to test it out, right? So I can delete this connection. So now I have this like free-floating AI agent, and I need to define the new AI agent. Let's see how this is done. We can do Open Router chat model, OpenAI chat model for advanced usage with AI chain.
Yeah, either Open Router or...
Yeah, I'll just, Nistan, thank you, but I'll go to Open Router just for the easy views of this, okay? We go to Open Router, select credential. Nathan doesn't have any like Open Router credentials in my case, so I can create a new credential. I will hide this window super quick from you guys so you'll not see my Open Router credential. And I will get a key here that supposedly works.
Just a quick hint for those, if you have a Home Assistant, it's also a plugin for Home Assistant, an add-on you can put in Home Assistant.
And then it can run completely. I actually need to set up on my
Home
Assistant.
What is Home Assistant? Is that on Apple or?
Yeah, it's a home automation alternative to Google Home or Alexa, for instance. So you can set it up. It's open source software. And then you can do the home automation with that. It has connection protocols to all of the devices.
Yeah, open source home automation system. Okay, so
It
back
does
to
so
our
much
things.
more, by the way.
It's incredible.
Media as well.
Yes. You guys see, I connected my API to OpenRouter, and now I have all the models, including Kimi K2 Thinking. Like literally took me a second, paste an API key, and then they do all of the work behind the scenes. So I now have an OpenRouter chat model. I need to name this, like here, I need to name this guy. You don't have to rename, but like Kimi K2 Thinking. Okay, rename. And so now, instead of this GPT-5 mini, I have Kimi K2 Thinking, and I can execute this node from this place. Let's take a look at how this looks. Execute. No, but I want. Okay, just play. So you can see now this agent runs and then it goes to Kimi K2 Thinking. I believe if you double click, you can actually see output here from Kimi K2. Now, Kimi K2 Thinking, it depends on whether or not they enabled the thinking traces back in the UI or not. This may take some time. For GPT-5, for example, it doesn't show me anything because GPT-5 thinking takes a while. This step does take a while. Kimi K2 is done. And now it calls the MCP client. Remember how I told you that every tweet has a bunch of links? I have connected an MCP tool here that uses Gina.ai. If you guys remember Gina, we talked about Gina. Gina allows you to do something like Gina Reader. You basically give it a URL, and it presents the URL back to you in Markdown. So here's an example of Gina. You go to Stack Overflow, this question, and then you do fetch content. Gina will give your AI a Markdown format of that web page so that you don't have to use HTML, for example. As you can see, it's ugly, and Gina gives you this like title, URL source, Markdown content. It's really nice for LLM context. It reduces the tokens that you need. So I connected Gina as an MCP, and I basically told my AIs, hey, if you have any amount of URLs in those tweets, use the Gina reader, go get their text, and then give me an output. So it looks like my Kimi K2 Thinking does know how to use these tools as they promised it would. I wish I could see the full output and show you kind of the full output, but it only shows you at the end of the node what actually happens. But here we did see that we got the output of this web page from this URL, the Hugging Face Collections ByteDance Aura, which is the example that we're showing. And now we're going to have to wait for Kimi. I just wanted to show what happens at the end of the workflow as well. What happens at the end of the workflow is that you have something, and that something needs a state. You need to put it somewhere. So I have kind of two outcomes. First of all, I have a channel, which all of you are welcome to also join. There's a channel, announcement channel. This is the discussion channel. There's an announcement channel for ThursdAI news updates. Everything that I will use will get posted here as well. And this channel is basically the output where I send all of the summaries. Sometimes there's no picture, so it uses ThursdAI. Here's an example of this thing we're working on. ByteDance releases Aura, looped language models. This is the link that Wolfram sent me in the beginning. The beginning of my workflow starts with Telegram. I send the link, and the end of my workflow lands in the channel, also via this API. And the links to Hugging Face and everything is here as well. Now, this is the problem of showing AI agents, especially the ones like Kimi. They take a while to load. But you saw how easy it was to connect a new one. Very similar.
You may not even have to use the thinking version for many workloads, because I used the normal Kimi with MCP and it was faster than the thinking one. It gave the same results. So it all depends.
I probably don't need to use the Kimi, and I think I had an issue here with some JSON that it responded with, but now we can see kind of the process. So this was Kimi, MCP client gave me some more context, and then it took Kimi quite a while, all of this to think. How much is this? It took 168 seconds, so almost 3 minutes to think through this. And then at the end, it didn't give me the right output as I asked for it. So ChatGPT is really like listening to this, but you can see the error. The output is, I'll help you prepare the notes for ThursdAI podcast about ByteDance Aura. Let me gather more detailed information from your Hugging Face model pages. I think it's because of the thinking. Maybe OpenRouter gave me the thinking first.
I think it may be the overloading, because I had so many interrupted tool calls as well.
Could be. But if we delete the Kimi one and then we get GPT-1 back, as you can see, I can test out new models super quick. This will play out much faster, and we'll see how the rest of the workflow goes.
Remember what Skylar Meow said last week, that the prompt format actually matters a lot for the API. So it might also just be that, but it might also just not be good with this task too. It was pretty good for me. So.
We have some comments from Joseph that says this should be turned into a vertical flow. It's probably easier, but it depends on. I'm assuming, Joseph, you're talking about just the UI. Folks are commenting and saying N8N will soon implement a text to workflow feature that creates an N8N workflow using natural language. That's great. I could absolutely see that happening. But for now, again, this essentially is not that far away if you just use ChatGPT Atlas and you ask what to do. And this is great because, so GPT-5 executed our node successfully, and now we can see that on the output of this, you can see the output fully exactly based on how I require it. The JSON I require, etc. You can see the 10 factoids, model families, or available sizes 1.4 and 2.6 parameter. I asked the AI model to extract based on all the links. And basically, the process, to very simply summarize, input from somewhere, then preparing this input to get more information, building the context for the AIs. So I have one AI agent that builds the context, and then I have another agent that actually does the thinking, the summarization, and then the output is sending it somewhere. In my case, there's the Telegram channel that I told you can join, and also Reflect Append. So I can show you how this works. Reflect is my notes taker, and I have the append system, and it's done. And then if we go to Reflect, and I go to my daily notes here, we can see it added it here. ByteDance released Aura, looped language models, and you can see the executive summary and 10 factoids. This has automated so much work that I did manually. It's a little bit slower than using a browser, but it's definitely worth checking out. Hosting N8N is possible on n8n.cloud, which is $20 a month, or on Hetzner, which I chose. It took a little while to set up, but again, with Atlas, it's really easy to just have it tell you exactly how to do the domain, the DNS, the HTTPS certificate, etc. And once you set it up, you can automate a bunch of stuff, which I plan to do as well in the future. So from coding with agents to non-coding and getting agents on ThursdAI this week. Hopefully this was helpful for some folks. Definitely, I feel like I've unlocked a new superpower in automation. And as Wolfram said, if you're running Home Assistant, you can run your workflows on there. I think with that, folks, we've managed to go through a whole show, even a little bit longer than we expected to, for November 8th. Who can believe it's already November? We are expecting a lot more interesting news for the end of November. A reminder, if you are coming to the NY AI Engineer in New York, I'll be there. We're going to have a show from the floor of an AI engineer as well. I'm probably going to work on getting some great guests in there. If you're coming to AI Engineer Code, please let me know. I'll be glad to meet you there. If you missed any part of the show this week, the show is getting turned into a newsletter and a podcast on a weekly basis called ThursdAI.news. Please subscribe to ThursdAI.news if you haven't done already. If you hit this QR code here, you should be very easily be able to get redirected to subscribe. I want to thank my co-hosts here, Nisten, Yam, Wolfram, and Kenton Varda from Cloudflare, who joined us before to talk about MCP as well. I look forward to seeing you all here next week, which should be a very, very exciting week. Shout out to everybody who did the releases. Hugging Face folks, Moonshot folks, OpenAI folks. Cheers, everyone. We'll see you here next week. Bye-bye.